Jung Clinic. When your inner voice isn't you, Jung's quick test and the reframe that frees you, is the voice you hear inside your head truly yours? Or is it a stranger, whispering doubts, fears and desires that feel alien yet undeniably present? We navigate our lives often assuming a singular, coherent self, a captain at the helm of our consciousness. But what if that captain is merely one voice in a bustling, often cacophonous inner city? What if the very notion of a unified self is an illusion, a comforting narrative we construct to make sense of the swirling currents of our psyche? This is the unsettling territory we'll explore today, moving beyond the superficial pronouncements of self-help to confront a profound truth about our inner landscape. A truth that can be both terrifying and, paradoxically, liberating. We often feel like we are one person, a distinct entity with consistent thoughts and feelings. Yet how often do we find ourselves acting in ways that surprise even ourselves? A sudden flash of anger, an uncharacteristic act of generosity, a persistent worry that seems to have no root in our present reality. These aren't just fleeting moods. They can feel like intrusions, like echoes from a forgotten room within our own minds. This internal dissonance, this feeling of being both the actor and the audience to our own lives, is not a sign of madness, but a fundamental aspect of the human condition. It's the echo of the unconscious, the vast, uncharted territory that Carl Jung so meticulously mapped. He understood that our conscious mind, that small island of awareness we inhabit, is but a fraction of our total psychological being. Beneath the surface lies an ocean of impulses, memories, archetypes, and shadow selves, all vying for expression, all contributing to the complex symphony of who we are. The struggle for self-understanding, for authenticity, often begins when we acknowledge that this inner monologue isn't always a friendly conversation with ourselves, but sometimes a battle with forces we don't fully comprehend. We yearn for clarity, for control, for a sense of mastery over our own thoughts and emotions, yet we are frequently tossed about by inner tides that seem to originate from beyond our conscious grasp. This isn't about embracing a victim mentality, about blaming our circumstances or our inner demons for every misstep. Instead, it's about recognizing the intricate, often hidden architecture of our psyche. It's about understanding that the I we present to the world, and even the I we perceive ourselves to be in our quietest moments, is a dynamic interplay of conscious intention and unconscious influence. The real journey begins when we stop fighting this internal multiplicity and start to understand it, when we begin to see the voices not as invaders, but as aspects of ourselves, perhaps neglected, perhaps misunderstood, but ultimately a part of our totality. This exploration promises not a simple fix, but a profound reorientation, a way to navigate the complexities of our inner world with greater wisdom and a deeper sense of self-acceptance, even amidst the inherent paradoxes of being human. The modern world, with its relentless demands and constant barrage of external stimuli, often exacerbates this internal fragmentation. We are encouraged to present a polished, singular persona, to be efficient, decisive, and always in control. This pressure to maintain a facade of unified selfhood can stifle the natural expression of our inner complexity, pushing those disowned parts deeper into the shadows, where they can fester and manifest in disruptive ways. We might experience this as chronic anxiety, inexplicable bouts of depression, or a pervasive sense of emptiness. A feeling that something essential is missing even when, on the surface, everything appears to be in order. The disconnect between our inner experience and our outward presentation becomes a source of profound psychological tension, a quiet crisis unfolding within the labyrinth of our own minds. This script will delve into Jung's radical insight into this inner division, offering not just an explanation, but a practical lens through which to view these internal dialogues. We'll explore a surprisingly simple yet powerful test he proposed to identify these alien voices, and more importantly, a reframing that can begin to untangle the knots of internal conflict. This is not about silencing the voices, but about understanding their origin and their purpose. It's about learning to distinguish between the authentic self and the projections, the masks, and the echoes of past experiences that can masquerade as our own thoughts and feelings. Prepare to embark on a journey that challenges the very foundations of your self-perception, a journey that promises not easy answers, but the profound clarity that comes from honest self-inquiry. The core concept we're navigating is the intricate nature of the psyche, moving beyond the simplistic notion of a singular, unified self to embrace a more nuanced understanding of our internal world. We've touched upon the idea that our conscious awareness is only a small part of who we are, and that unconscious forces play a significant role in shaping our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Today, we delve deeper into the mechanisms by which these unconscious influences operate and how they can be perceived as distinct, almost separate entities within us. This isn't about duality in the sense of good versus evil, but about the inherent multiplicity of the human psyche, a concept central to Jungian psychology. Imagine your psyche not as a single, pristine lake, but as a vast, interconnected network of underground springs, some clear and flowing, others murky and turbulent, all feeding into the larger body of water. Each spring represents a distinct psychological complex, a constellation of emotionally charged ideas and images that operate with a degree of autonomy. These complexes, though rooted in our personal history and collective human experience, can sometimes feel like independent agents, dictating our reactions and shaping our perceptions in ways that bypass our conscious will. To grasp this, consider the phenomenon of projection. We often attribute our own unacceptable traits, desires, or fears onto others, seeing them in the world outside ourselves rather than recognizing them within. This is an unconscious defense mechanism, a way of disowning aspects of ourselves that we find too disturbing to acknowledge. For instance, someone who harbors deep-seated insecurities about their competence might be hypercritical of colleagues, perceiving their every action as a sign of inadequacy. The critical voice they hear isn't necessarily their own reasoned judgment. It could be the projection of their own self-doubt, amplified and externalized. Similarly, unacknowledged ambitions or desires might be projected onto a romantic partner, leading to an obsessive focus on their achievements or perceived failures, as if their lives were a mirror reflecting our own unlived potential. This process highlights how our unconscious complexes can influence our relationships and our understanding of reality, often without our conscious awareness. Furthermore, we must consider the concept of the shadow. This is not merely a collection of negative traits, but rather the disowned parts of ourselves, those aspects that we deem incompatible with our conscious ego ideal. It encompasses everything we repress, deny, or fail to integrate into our personality. The shadow can contain not only primitive impulses and socially unacceptable desires, but also undeveloped positive qualities such as creativity, assertiveness, or spontaneity, which we might have suppressed due to societal conditioning or personal trauma. When these shadow elements remain unconscious, they can exert a powerful, often destructive, influence. They might manifest as irrational fears, inexplicable compulsions, or sudden outbursts of aggression. Conversely, a person who consciously acknowledges and integrates their shadow can become more whole, more authentic, and possess a greater capacity for empathy and understanding, not just of themselves, but of others. The implications of this inner multiplicity extend to our very sense of identity. If our thoughts and feelings are not always directly under our conscious control, then who precisely is I? This question strikes at the heart of our existential experience. It challenges the illusion of a fixed, unchanging self and points towards a more fluid, dynamic understanding of our being. Think about how your personality can shift subtly depending on your environment or the people you're with. You might be assertive and decisive in a professional setting, yet hesitant and uncertain in a social gathering, or vice versa. These are not necessarily contradictory selves, but different facets of your complex psyche coming to the fore, influenced by the specific context. Recognizing this inherent variability can be profoundly freeing, alleviating the pressure to maintain a rigid, artificial persona and allowing for a more authentic and adaptable way of being. It encourages us to embrace the contradictions within us, to see them not as flaws, but as evidence of a rich and multifaceted inner life. The power of these unconscious complexes lies in their emotional charge. They are not simply abstract ideas, they are deeply felt experiences that can hijack our rational minds. When a particular complex is activated, it can color our entire perception of a situation, leading to disproportionate emotional reactions. For example, a person with a strong abandonment complex might interpret a friend's delayed response to a text message as a personal rejection, triggering intense feelings of fear and loneliness, even if the friend is simply busy. This emotional amplification is a hallmark of unconscious influence, demonstrating how deeply ingrained patterns can shape our immediate experience of reality. Understanding this dynamic is the first step towards regaining a sense of agency, not by suppressing these emotions, but by recognizing their source and learning to respond to them with conscious awareness rather than automatic reaction. It's about developing a discerning ear to the internal dialogue, learning to differentiate between the authentic voice of the self and the echoes of these powerful, emotionally charged complexes. The exploration of our inner landscape reveals not just the presence of unconscious complexes, but the very dynamics of their interaction with our conscious ego. Beyond mere projection, we encounter the phenomenon of introjection, where external voices, societal norms, or the perceived expectations of significant others become internalized, influencing our self-judgment and decision-making as if they were our own deeply held beliefs. Consider the internal critic, that relentless voice that chides us for perceived failures or imperfections. While it might feel like an intrinsic part of our personality, it often represents the internalized judgment of a parent, a teacher, or even a cultural ideal that we have adopted as our own internal standard. This introjected voice can be particularly insidious, as it masquerades as self-awareness, leading us to believe we are acting out of personal conviction when, in fact, we are responding to an external mandate we've unconsciously absorbed. This internal dialogue, therefore, isn't always a conversation between different parts of you, but sometimes a reenactment of past interpersonal dynamics playing out within the theater of your mind. Building on this, another crucial layer is the concept of the anima and animus, Jung's terms for the unconscious feminine aspect in men and the unconscious masculine aspect in women, respectively. These archetypal images are not simply about gender roles, but represent fundamental psychic energies that, when undeveloped or unacknowledged, can lead to significant internal friction and distorted perceptions of the opposite sex. For instance, a man who has suppressed his own tender, receptive qualities might find himself unconsciously projecting these onto women, expecting them to embody these traits for him and becoming frustrated when they don't conform to this idealized image. Conversely, a woman who disowns her assertive, logical side might be drawn to domineering partners, unconsciously seeking to have these qualities enacted in her life by another. These archetypal influences operate at a profound level, shaping our romantic attachments, our creative endeavors, and our overall capacity for wholeness by influencing how we relate to both our inner contrasexual potential and the external world. Furthermore, the intensity of these unconscious influences is often tied to their numinosity, their capacity to evoke awe, wonder, or a sense of the sacred. When an archetypal image or a powerful complex captures our imagination, it can possess a compelling, almost magnetic quality, drawing our conscious attention and energy. This is why certain myths, symbols, or even individuals can have such a profound impact on us, resonating with deep, unconscious patterns within our psyche. The danger arises when this numinosity is mistaken for objective reality, or when the conscious ego becomes overwhelmed by its power, leading to a state of inflation where one feels godlike, or a state of psychic possession where one's actions are dictated by the archetypal force. Navigating this requires a delicate balance, acknowledging the power and significance of these inner images without losing one's grounding in conscious reality. It is about engaging with these potent forces with respect and discernment, rather than being swept away by their current. Consider now how these internal dynamics manifest in moments of creative block or periods of profound existential questioning. When an artist struggles to create, it might not be a lack of skill, but an unconscious resistance to an emerging creative impulse, perhaps stemming from a fear of judgment or a past trauma associated with self-expression. The internal voices heard during such times might be the whispers of the shadow, warning against exposure, or the introjected criticisms of past mentors. Similarly, the gnawing sense of meaninglessness that can afflict individuals might be a signal from the unconscious that the current life path is out of alignment with deeper archetypal needs, a call to explore those uncharted territories of the psyche that have been neglected. These aren't mere psychological blips. They are often profound invitations from the deeper self, urging us towards greater integration and authenticity. Now think about how this applies when you find yourself inexplicably drawn to certain artistic styles, historical periods, or even specific types of people. You might feel an immediate kinship, a sense of familiarity that transcends logical explanation. This resonance often points to the activation of latent archetypal patterns within your own psyche. It's as if you are recognizing a reflection of an inner image, a subtle echo of the anima or animus, or a manifestation of a universal archetype that your unconscious is seeking to engage with. This recognition can be a powerful catalyst for self-discovery, offering clues to your deeper motivations, your hidden potentials, and the underlying themes that shape your life's journey. It encourages us to pay closer attention to these intuitive attractions, seeing them not as random curiosities, but as meaningful signposts pointing towards the rich tapestry of our inner world. The inherent fragmentation of the psyche, as explored, doesn't just manifest as internal conflict. It profoundly shapes our perception of reality and our interactions with the external world. We often operate under the assumption that our objective understanding of events is accurate, yet our internal complexes can act as powerful filters, subtly distorting what we see, hear, and interpret. This distortion isn't necessarily a conscious deception. Rather, it's a consequence of our unconscious biases and predispositions coloring our experience. For instance, a person grappling with a deep-seated fear of failure might interpret a neutral comment from a supervisor as veiled criticism, leading to a cascade of anxious thoughts and defensive behaviors, all stemming from a subjective interpretation rather than an objective assessment of the situation. This illustrates how our inner world actively constructs our outer experience, creating a feedback loop where our psychological state influences our perception, which in turn reinforces our psychological state. Furthermore, this internal multiplicity can lead to a phenomenon known as psychic inflation, a dangerous over-identification with an archetypal image or a powerful complex. When this occurs, the individual's ego becomes inflated, believing itself to be something far greater than it is, often adopting grandiose ideas or behaviors that are out of sync with their actual life circumstances. Imagine someone who, after a particularly vivid dream or a profound spiritual experience, begins to believe they possess unique, divinely inspired insights that elevate them above ordinary humanity. This isn't necessarily a sign of genuine spiritual growth, but a potential symptom of ego inflation, where the ego has become possessed by the numinous energy of an archetype, losing its capacity for critical self-reflection and grounding. This state can be isolating, leading to a disconnect from reality and an inability to engage constructively with others who do not share these inflated perceptions. The individual loses touch with their ordinary human limitations and responsibilities, mistaking a powerful inner experience for an objective truth about their superior status. Conversely, the opposite can occur. A profound sense of psychic depletion or anomie, where the ego feels overwhelmed by the sheer multiplicity of internal voices and impulses, leading to a loss of direction and a feeling of being adrift. In such cases, the individual struggles to find a stable sense of self, constantly buffeted by conflicting desires and demands from various psychic components. This can manifest as indecisiveness, a lack of motivation, or a pervasive sense of emptiness and futility. The conscious ego, unable to integrate or manage the diverse energies within, becomes passive, leading to a state where life feels meaningless and devoid of purpose. It's as if the orchestra has too many instruments playing different tunes simultaneously, resulting in a cacophony rather than a symphony, and the conductor, the ego, has lost the ability to bring harmony. This sense of inner chaos can be deeply distressing, leading individuals to seek external structures or authorities to impose order, sometimes at the expense of their own authentic expression. Consider how this internal fragmentation impacts our capacity for genuine connection. We often project our own unacknowledged needs and desires onto others, seeking in them what we are unable to find or admit within ourselves. This can lead to relationships that are based on illusion rather than authentic recognition. For example, someone might be intensely attracted to a partner who embodies certain qualities they themselves lack or have suppressed, such as confidence or artistic talent. However, if these qualities are projections of their own disowned self, the relationship may eventually falter as the idealized image clashes with the partner's reality, or as the individual's own unacknowledged needs begin to surface in disruptive ways. True connection, in contrast, arises from a conscious awareness of one's own inner landscape, allowing for a more honest and less demanding engagement with others, recognizing them as distinct individuals rather than mirrors for our own internal projections. This leads us to a crucial point: the potential for individuation, Jung's term for the lifelong process of psychological development and integration. It is the journey of becoming one's true, unique self, a process that involves confronting and integrating the various aspects of the psyche, including the shadow, the anima, animus, and other complexes. This is not about achieving perfection or eliminating the unconscious, but about consciously engaging with its contents, understanding their origins and their impact, and synthesizing them into a more coherent and authentic whole. It is a path that requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to face the often uncomfortable truths about ourselves. The goal is not to eliminate the multiplicity, but to achieve a conscious relationship with it, allowing the ego to serve as a wise mediator rather than a helpless victim of inner forces. It's about transforming the cacophony into a complex yet harmonious symphony, where each instrument plays its part in service of the whole. A fascinating aspect of our inner multiplicity, often overlooked in discussions of the psyche, is the concept of the collective unconscious and its archetypal patterns. While personal complexes arise from individual experience, archetypes are universal, primordial images and patterns of behavior that are inherited and shared by all humanity. These aren't learned. They are innate structures of the psyche, like the instincts that guide animal behavior. Think of them as the fundamental blueprints for human experience, the recurring characters and scenarios that appear in myths, fairy tales, and dreams across cultures and throughout history. The hero's journey, the wise old man, the great mother, the trickster. These are all manifestations of archetypes that resonate deeply within us because they speak to fundamental aspects of the human condition. They provide a framework for understanding universal human experiences like birth, death, love, and struggle. These archetypes, while universal, are not static. They are dynamic forces that can manifest in countless individual ways. For example, the archetype of the Great Mother can appear in both nurturing and devouring forms. On one hand, she represents fertility, compassion, and unconditional love. On the other, she can embody possessiveness, destruction, and the overwhelming abyss of the unconscious. The particular way an individual experiences this archetype is shaped by their personal history and cultural context. But the underlying pattern, the fundamental energy of the Great Mother, remains a shared human inheritance. Recognizing these archetypal influences can help us understand why certain situations or characters evoke such powerful, almost instinctual responses in us. It explains why we might feel an immediate sense of awe towards a benevolent leader, or a primal fear towards a destructive force, even if we have no direct personal experience with them. Building on this, consider the impact of synchronicity, a concept Jung developed to describe meaningful coincidences. These are not mere random occurrences, but events that seem to be connected by meaning rather than causality. Jung believed that synchronistic events often occur when an archetype is activated in the collective unconscious, creating a kind of psychic resonance that manifests in the external world. For instance, you might be intensely preoccupied with a particular problem, and then, seemingly out of nowhere, you encounter a book, a conversation, or an event that directly addresses your issue in a remarkably timely and relevant way. This isn't just luck. According to Jung, it's a manifestation of the psyche's interconnectedness with the external world, a sign that inner and outer realities are momentarily aligned by a shared, underlying pattern. These moments can be profoundly significant, offering guidance, validation, or a glimpse into the deeper order of existence. Another crucial layer to explore is the role of symbols in bridging the conscious and unconscious realms. Because archetypes and unconscious contents are not directly accessible to rational thought, they often express themselves through symbols. Dreams are a prime example. The dream imagery, a flying bird, a dark forest, a flowing river, are symbolic representations of deeper psychic processes. Understanding these symbols is like learning a new language, a language of the soul. It requires moving beyond a literal interpretation and seeking the underlying meaning that the symbol evokes. For example, water in dreams often symbolizes emotions, the unconscious or the flow of life. Its state, clear, turbulent, stagnant, can indicate the condition of one's emotional or unconscious life. Engaging with these symbols, whether through dream analysis, art, or meditation, can unlock insights into the unconscious forces shaping our lives, offering pathways to integration and healing. Now consider how this applies when you find yourself drawn to certain recurring themes in your life or in the stories you consume. Perhaps you're consistently fascinated by tales of rebellion against authority, or you find yourself drawn to characters who overcome immense personal odds. These fascinations are not arbitrary. They often point to the activation of specific archetypes within your psyche. Your unconscious is signaling an interest in exploring these fundamental human patterns. Recognizing these patterns can provide a profound sense of direction, illuminating the deeper narrative of your life and the psychological work that is most relevant for your growth. It's like discovering you've been unconsciously rehearsing a particular role, and now you have the opportunity to understand the script and your part in it. The intricate dance between our conscious awareness and the vast, unseen currents of the unconscious can profoundly influence our capacity for genuine self-knowledge. One significant manifestation of this dynamic is the phenomenon of the persona, the social mask we wear to navigate the external world. This persona is often a carefully curated presentation of ourselves, designed to elicit a particular response from others and to conform to societal expectations. While essential for social functioning, an over-identification with the persona can lead to a profound disconnect from our authentic self. When we mistake the mask for the face, we risk losing touch with the deeper, more complex realities of our inner being. We might find ourselves prioritizing external validation over internal integrity, leading to a hollow sense of accomplishment or a persistent feeling of being an imposter, even when outwardly successful. The danger lies in becoming so adept at playing the role that we forget who we were before the costume. Furthermore, our internal landscape is not static. It's a dynamic ecosystem constantly in flux, influenced by our experiences, our relationships, and our evolving understanding of ourselves. This fluidity means that what we perceive as self can shift over time. What feels like an alien voice today might, with conscious engagement and integration, become a recognized and understood part of our inner dialogue tomorrow. This process requires a willingness to engage with discomfort, to explore the edges of our understanding, and to accept that self-discovery is not a destination, but an ongoing journey. The parts of ourselves that feel most alien are often those that hold the most untapped potential for growth and transformation. They are the uncharted territories of our inner world, waiting to be explored with curiosity and compassion rather than fear and judgment. Consider now how this inner multiplicity affects our decision-making processes, particularly in moments of significant life choices. When faced with a crucial decision, we often experience an internal debate, a weighing of different options and their potential consequences. This debate isn't always a straightforward, logical process. It can be influenced by various unconscious complexes, introjected values, and archetypal impulses. For instance, a decision to pursue a risky career change might be fueled by the archetype of the hero's quest, while simultaneously being hampered by the shadow's fear of failure or the introjected voice of a parent warning against instability. The challenge lies in discerning which of these internal voices represents our authentic desire and which are echoes of past conditioning or unconscious fears. Learning to navigate this internal deliberation with greater clarity requires developing an inner discernment, a capacity to listen to the nuances of our own psyche. Conversely, the struggle to make decisions can also stem from an overwhelming sense of indecisiveness that arises from a lack of integration. When different psychic components are in stark opposition, and the ego lacks the authority or the insight to mediate effectively, the result can be a paralyzing inability to commit to a course of action. This isn't simply a matter of weighing pros and cons. It's a symptom of a deeper internal disharmony. The individual may feel pulled in multiple directions, each representing a powerful yet conflicting inner imperative. For example, one part of the psyche might crave security and stability, while another yearns for adventure and exploration. Without a conscious process of understanding and integrating these competing needs, the individual remains trapped in a state of perpetual hesitation, unable to move forward. This can lead to a profound sense of stagnation, where life's opportunities pass by, while the individual remains immobilized by internal conflict. Another significant aspect of our inner life, particularly relevant to Jung's work, is the concept of the self, which represents the totality of the psyche, encompassing both the conscious and unconscious. The self is not the ego. It is the organizing principle, the archetype of wholeness, and the ultimate goal of individuation. When we encounter these seemingly alien voices or disowned parts of ourselves, they are, in a sense, messages from the self, urging us towards greater integration and completeness. They are not aberrations, but rather vital components of our total being that require conscious attention and assimilation. The journey towards individuation, therefore, is a continuous process of dialogue between the ego and the self, a striving to bring the fragmented parts of ourselves into conscious awareness and harmonious relationship, ultimately leading to a more profound sense of authenticity and purpose. The notion of an inner voice, especially one that feels foreign, can also be understood through the lens of psychic residue. Just as physical objects leave imprints and traces on their surroundings, our past experiences, particularly those that were emotionally charged or unresolved, can leave behind energetic imprints within our psyche. These residues are not identical to complexes, which are organized clusters of ideas and emotions. Instead, they are more akin to faint echoes, fragmented memories, or sensory impressions that can surface unexpectedly, influencing our mood, our perceptions, or even our bodily sensations. Imagine walking into a room where a heated argument once took place. Even after the participants have left, a certain tension might linger in the air. Similarly, unresolved conflicts, moments of intense fear or profound grief can leave psychic residue that can be reactivated by seemingly unrelated present-day events. These echoes can manifest as a sudden sense of unease, a fleeting image, or an irrational aversion, feeling like an intrusion from an unknown source because their origin lies buried in the unexamined past. Furthermore, consider the impact of cultural conditioning on our internal dialogue. Beyond our personal history, we are deeply shaped by the collective narratives, beliefs, and values of the society we inhabit. These societal imprints can manifest as internalized expectations, judgments, and even subconscious biases that we mistake for our own original thoughts. For instance, societal norms around success, relationships, or gender roles can become so deeply ingrained that they operate as automatic thought patterns, dictating our desires and aspirations without conscious deliberation. A person might feel an intense, seemingly inherent drive for material wealth, not because it aligns with their deepest personal values, but because it is a dominant narrative within their culture, a pervasive message that has been absorbed and internalized over time. These culturally imprinted voices can feel particularly alien when they contradict our more authentic, individual inclinations, creating an internal dissonance between who we are told we should be and who we intuitively feel ourselves to be. Another critical dimension is the phenomenon of energetic entanglement. In certain instances, the psychological energy of one individual can become unconsciously linked with another, particularly in close relationships or during intense emotional experiences. This entanglement can lead to a blurring of boundaries, where one person begins to experience the emotions, thoughts, or even physical sensations of another, as if they were their own. This is not about telepathy in the conventional sense, but about a subconscious resonance, a shared energetic field that can cause one to feel inexplicably burdened by another's distress or drawn to their preoccupations. Imagine a close friend going through a period of profound sadness. You might find yourself experiencing waves of melancholy that seem disproportionate to your own circumstances, a subtle mirroring of their psychic state. This can feel like an alien intrusion because the source of the feeling originates externally, yet it is experienced internally. Now, reflect on how these subtle influences can shape your creative pursuits or your problem-solving approaches. When you are working on a creative project and an idea suddenly sparks, or a solution emerges seemingly out of nowhere, it might not be solely the product of your conscious effort. It could be the surfacing of psychic residue from a past inspiration, an echo of a culturally valued narrative, or even an unconscious energetic connection with another's creative process. Recognizing these subtle origins can help you to differentiate between genuine inspiration and the echoes of external influences, allowing for a more authentic and potent creative expression. It encourages a deeper self-inquiry into the roots of your ideas, fostering a more discerning and empowered approach to your inner world. This intricate tapestry of inner voices and influences introduces a profound challenge: the discernment of authentic desire versus conditioned response. It's not merely about identifying an alien whisper, it's about understanding the genesis of that whisper. A significant, yet often overlooked aspect of this process involves the concept of psychic mimicry. This occurs when parts of our psyche, particularly those that have been suppressed or disowned, adopt the characteristics of external figures or dominant cultural narratives as a means of gaining expression or influence. Imagine a deeply held ambition that has been actively discouraged throughout one's upbringing. Instead of manifesting as a direct longing, it might subtly adopt the language or the perceived values of a successful peer or a cultural icon, presenting itself as an external aspiration rather than an internal drive. This mimicry allows the suppressed energy to bypass conscious defenses, making it appear as if the desire originates from an outside source or a generalized societal trend, thus obscuring its true personal significance. Building on this, we encounter the phenomenon of archetypal possession, distinct from mere influence. While archetypes provide fundamental patterns, possession implies a more complete usurpation of the ego's agency. This isn't about integrating an archetype. It's about the ego becoming overwhelmed and identified with a powerful archetypal force, leading to a dramatic shift in personality and behavior that feels entirely alien to the individual's previous sense of self. Consider a typically mild-mannered person who, under specific circumstances, becomes consumed by an overwhelming rage or a fanatical conviction, acting in ways that are utterly uncharacteristic and seemingly beyond their control. This can be interpreted as the ego being temporarily sidelined by a potent archetypal energy, such as the warrior or the prophet, that has seized control. The individual might later recall these episodes with a sense of bewilderment, as if a stranger inhabited their body and mind. Furthermore, the subtle infiltration of subliminal suggestion through pervasive media and cultural narratives warrants consideration. Unlike overt messaging, subliminal suggestion operates at a level below conscious awareness, embedding ideas, desires, or fears that can gradually shape our internal landscape without our explicit consent. This can manifest as a growing, inexplicable attraction to certain products, a pervasive anxiety about specific societal issues, or an unexamined adherence to particular ideologies. These implanted voices can feel deeply personal, yet their origin lies in the carefully crafted external environment. They contribute to the sense that our thoughts and desires are not entirely our own, but rather a composite of personal experience and externally programmed inclinations, creating a complex internal dialogue where it becomes difficult to distinguish genuine selfhood from manufactured wanting. Conversely, the experience of profound creative inspiration, often described as a muse speaking, can also be misunderstood as an external voice. However, in its most authentic form, this inspiration is not a usurpation, but a spontaneous eruption of latent potentials and archetypal energies that have been consciously or unconsciously cultivated. It's the ego's receptivity to the deeper currents of the psyche, allowing the universal patterns of creativity to flow through individual consciousness. The key distinction lies in the feeling of agency and integration. While possession feels like an external takeover, authentic inspiration feels like a profound moment of connection and expanded selfhood, where the ego acts as a conduit rather than a puppet. The challenge for the individual is to discern the subtle difference between being possessed by an archetype and being inspired by its universal resonance. Now consider how this applies when you encounter a sudden, intense urge to undertake a project or engage in a particular activity that feels completely out of character, yet strangely compelling. Is it a genuine emergent desire from your core self? A manifestation of psychic mimicry adopting an external guise, a sign of archetypal possession taking hold, or perhaps the subtle influence of subliminal suggestion embedded in your environment? The process of discernment begins with observing the quality of the urge. Does it feel expansive and life-affirming, or does it feel compulsive and controlling? Does it align with your deeper values? Or does it seem to serve an external agenda or an unacknowledged past trauma? This nuanced questioning is the starting point for understanding the true origin of the inner impulses that guide and sometimes mislead us on our journey towards self-awareness. Reflecting on this journey so far, we've traversed a landscape of internal experience, moving from the unsettling suspicion of an unfamiliar voice within to a deeper appreciation of the psyche's intricate architecture. The initial disquiet, the feeling of an echo from an unknown chamber of the self, has gradually unfolded into a more nuanced understanding of how our inner world operates. The concepts we've explored, like the subtle interplay of conscious intention and unconscious influence, the pervasive impact of internalized external narratives, and the way past experiences can leave their indelible marks, all converge to paint a picture of a self far more complex and dynamic than a simple, unified entity. It's akin to standing before a vast, ancient forest where individual trees, seemingly distinct, are all interconnected by a hidden root system, each influencing the health and character of the entire ecosystem. The whispers we initially perceived as alien are, in this light, revealed as integral, albeit often unacknowledged, aspects of this profound interconnectedness. In light of these insights, the path forward, or rather, the deeper inquiry that awaits, becomes illuminated. The journey has not been about identifying and banishing these internal voices, but about cultivating a more discerning awareness of their origins and their subtle yet powerful effects on our lived experience. It's about learning to distinguish the authentic resonance of our deepest self from the echoes of conditioning, the projections of unmet needs, or the residual imprints of past encounters. This emergent understanding shifts the focus from a struggle for singular control to a practice of conscious engagement, fostering a more fluid and integrated relationship with the totality of our being. We are learning to attune our inner ear, not to silence the symphony, but to appreciate the intricate harmonies and dissonances that compose the unique melody of our existence, preparing us to consider how this newfound awareness can inform our approach to the world and our own inner compass. The cumulative effect of these explorations is a subtle yet profound recalibration of our perspective, urging us toward a more integrated and authentic way of navigating the complexities of both our inner and outer realities, paving the way for a more profound final contemplation. The journey through the labyrinth of the self, marked by the echoes of unfamiliar voices and the subtle currents of the unconscious, culminates not in a definitive answer, but in a profound shift of perspective. We began with the unsettling question of whether the internal monologue truly belongs to us, and we have journeyed through the intricate landscapes of complexes, archetypes, and the shadow, recognizing that the I is not a static monolith, but a dynamic, multifaceted entity. The voices we once perceived as alien are not intruders to be expelled, but integral aspects of our total psychic being, each carrying a message, a history, a potential for integration. To attempt to silence them is to deny a part of ourselves. To understand them is to embark on the path of true self-discovery. This exploration reveals that authenticity is not found in the eradication of inner multiplicity, but in the conscious embrace and integration of its diverse expressions. The profound implication of this understanding is that our perceived limitations and internal conflicts are not necessarily flaws to be overcome, but rather invitations to a deeper, more complete selfhood. The very aspects of ourselves that feel foreign, that whisper doubts or manifest as irrational impulses, often hold the keys to our most significant growth. They are the uncharted territories of our inner world, and by approaching them with curiosity rather than fear, we can unlock hidden potentials and transform perceived weaknesses into sources of strength. This is the essence of individuation, not the achievement of a perfect unified self, but the ongoing courageous process of becoming whole, of integrating the disparate parts of our psyche into a harmonious, authentic whole. The true practice begins now, in the quiet moments of reflection, in the mindful observation of our inner dialogue, and in the courageous willingness to engage with the entirety of who we are, the light and the shadow, the known and the unknown. This ongoing dialogue with the self is not a solitary pursuit confined to introspection. It profoundly reshapes our engagement with the world. When we begin to recognize the projections and internalized narratives that shape our perceptions, we gain the capacity for more genuine connection with others. We can move beyond mistaking individuals for mirrors of our own inner states, and instead engage with them as distinct beings, fostering relationships built on authentic recognition rather than unconscious expectation. The wisdom gleaned from exploring our inner multiplicity allows us to approach life's challenges not as external threats to be conquered, but as opportunities for deeper self-understanding and growth. It is a continuous unfolding, a lifelong commitment to listening to the subtle wisdom of our own psyche, allowing it to guide us toward a life lived with greater intention, courage, and profound self-acceptance. If this reflection has resonated with you, if it has sparked a deeper inquiry within, then join me. Subscribe and continue this journey of profound